Hello and welcome to the Age of AI podcast. On the show, we talk to entrepreneurs and innovators all over the planet who are using machine learning to transform their industries. And we mean real-world applications, tangible business value, not just research projects. This podcast is produced by Sanprem Transnational, which is a global education company helping non-technical entrepreneurs and executives become technically fluent. Thank you and hope you enjoy the episode.
Hello everyone, I'm your host Aman, CEO of Sanprem, and today we have a new very special guest, Dagmar Schuller, who is the CEO and founder of audEERING. And audEERING is a really interesting company. It's a deep tech company which is using AI to detect emotional and health information from a person's voice. So their technology helps them literally detect or diagnose diseases from voice data simply by hearing voice from a microphone. And so Dagmar and I are going to talk about how this really works and why it's so special to diagnose. It's like a futuristic thing, right? So Dagmar, thank you so much for joining us today. You're building like the one of the sci-fi technologies that we've had on the podcast so far.
Hello, Aman. Hello to the audience. Thank you very much for having me today. I'm very happy to talk about this topic, which is also something that I'm really proud of and excited about every day when I join the company or go to the office. And as Aman already laid out, it is something that somehow seems still a lot of fiction. But if we look at it in depth, a lot of it is already some sort of reality in a way that it can be used. Of course, at the moment, it is still not perfect, but the evolving is coming from day to day, and we have every day new improvements. So this is a very exciting time for us, not only from a research perspective, but also from an applied technology perspective.
So give us an overview, and I know you're building multiple types of projects. Like there's the emotion detection, right? That's I guess more for the marketing or like customer service kind of like applications. I can see a lot of there, and then there's also the healthcare side. So, as an overview, what are you working on as a company? What are all the different products or projects that you're working on?
Okay, so just to understand a little bit about what type of projects we're working on, just 2-3 sentences on the background where we are coming from. So
Yeah.
audEERING has been a spin-off of the Technological University of Munich. The TU Munich is one of the forefront universities and excellence universities in the technical area, especially in electronics and what we did is that we founded the company based on about 20 years of extensive research in the area of emotion recognition, but also in the area of speech analysis, AI-based speech analysis. And we were set out in order to have different type of utilization cases for this type of technology. So as you said at the beginning, you can imagine that emotion recognition can be used for almost everything because all decisions that you do are somehow based on certain emotions. If you don't have a good gut feeling, you don't do things. So that's where we actually started out. So from the first practical cases that we used were rather project-based, where we worked with big companies like in market research and so on. But since a couple of years, we are now having standardizations and really products off the shelf in different type of areas. Core product is called Device. This is an emotion and scene detection capability that you can have as an SDK implemented on your device, as it suggests, but also as a web API. So what Device does, it analyzes your emotions and provides you feedback on those type of emotions in real time. And you can always be the head or always be controlling your data because it is stored on the device. So we can even analyze it with this type of technology without having to have the data stored on the device. We can use this in real time. And this device is our core technology. It analyzes not only the emotions, but it can also analyze social scenes, that is detecting whether you are talking to somebody, whether you're in a group, whether you're alone, and also the environmental area where you are. It means like whether you are in a restaurant, whether you're commuting, whether you're in the office, whether you're at home. So basically different type of sounds that also impact how you feel. So basically we always say it's detecting the overall audio, comes down to the social scene, comes down to the individual. So this is our core product, and this can be used in different type of industries. So we have clients and customers in the automotive space that are using this type of technology to detect different type of driver states, or also for autonomous driving pilots, different type of possibilities for targeted entertainment or targeted cabin comfort. We have device settings also for hearables and wearables manufacturers, for example, for smart active denoising or enhancing of different type of sounds. And we have device also, of course, in a use case as we originally started out for market research, where we are utilizing this type of technology in order to see how a person feels towards a product, towards a brand, or towards a certain service that it is provided from. We have a second range that is very much in the call center area, where we analyze the emotions of the caller and the agents for two different purposes. For the caller, to enhance, of course, customer satisfaction and to improve the customer journey, but also for the agents in order to have a neutral tool that actually analyzes not only their own speech, but the agent, in order to reduce stress, but also in order to provide a support for different type of actions that the agents can do. Then our third big product area is in the entertainment part. So we have a product that is called Entertain, that analyzes emotions in the video space area. The first part here is that we provide a Unity and framework, and also different type of other frameworks to implement emotions as a part of a game. That means just think about, or a new game, think about somebody's playing a role play game, and you have to say, let's say, some sort of do some magic in order to create a potion, yeah, that makes you stronger. And you could even say how intense you basically speak or create or make this speech, the more intense the potion gets, so it better works out. Or you can also implement the emotion as part of a fight or as part of a specific action that you're doing. So you're actually getting more into the emotion of the gamer. And this also influences then the game. The second part is also derived from that. We have a possibility plugin for supporting games developers for testing the games, how people are reacting to the games, and already before they are even launched. And we have a third product in this line that actually detects stress factors for children. So especially when children are confronted with media, parents are very often very cautious what they do and what they don't do, even if it's serious gaming. And we have Entertain Family, it's called, as an observation platform for the parents in order to detect stress factors and negative implementations, but also positive inductions throughout the game for the child. And those are the three areas that we having in the more or less commercial part, as I always call it. So the device part for intelligent smart systems, the entertainment part for the video gaming, and the call center part. And then we have products in the health space. So the health space part, of course, also interacts with the other part always, like the device part, especially because we also can retrieve voice biomarkers or health data from a device, from a hearable or wearable. So those platforms are interlinked. And here we have a product that is called AI Sound Lab. And AI Sound Lab allows for standardized voice tests that are linking for the recognition, but also for the understanding of voice biomarkers. And voice biomarkers are indications in that respect that allow a diagnosis of certain type of neurodegenerative and neurocognitive diseases, but also from psychic diseases, like, for example, burnout and depression. So also our emotion recognition technology is used very much for health. And in that area, we are still very much also in the research part. But for some of the diseases, we are shortly now for medical certification in order to use those type of biomarkers.
I see. So to summarize what you said, the way I understand it, on the entertainment, on the emotion side, right? You have three like fronts in a way. One is that you provide the technology as an API or an SDK that app
Mhm.
developers can build into their apps the way they want, right?
Exactly. Yes.
And that has basically that. And then besides that, you also have a domain specific product for gaming and for the call center, or is that the same product and you can use, and you have two markets like entertainment and call centers?
No, it's different products that are
Mm,
specialized for these industries.
I
So,
see, I see.
for example, the call center product, you have different ways of installing it, like on premise, on your PC, or also integrate the call center part in the headset. With the entertain part, it's basically we are developing for frameworks that most gaming developers are using, like for
Mm,
example, a Unity plugin
mm,
or Unreal plugin.
mm.
And for the device section, it's, as I said, an SDK, but also a web API functionality that is designed in order to maximize the outcome for also minimum of technology hardware. As it can run on a Raspberry Pi, it can run on a
Oh, I see.
smartphone, it can run basically on also small devices in order to deliver information to you based on the emotions.
It can run on Raspberry Pis.
Yes.
So and it's a deep learning software, right? It's like a deep
Yes.
learning base. So it actually, so
Yes.
you don't need like GPUs or anything or something fancy hardware to actually run these models on a chip.
That's correct. We have different type of ways, of course. Of course, you
Hmm.
cannot do everything
Yeah.
or cannot have a big functionality, but we have modules that are designed in order to fit also small hardware settings. And we
Hmm.
have, of course, the possibility to enlarge them. So we also have the modules designed in a way that it can work with big data, but also with sparse data.
Hmm.
So we have functionalities that utilize more or less feature extraction, but on
Hmm.
the other hand, we also work with deep neural nets or also hybrid solutions that we have in that respect. So whatever you are confronting us with hardware-wise, we usually have an answer. But of course, depending on what we are confronted hardware-wise, you can do more or less with it.
And by the way, for those who are non-technical who are listening to this, we link to some resources to explain the terms that she's using, like feature extraction, and then the hybrid approach. So don't worry,
Yeah.
we'll cover the knowledge gaps there. Okay, so that was the entertainment side, right? You have, and by the way, the scalable like different modules for different levels of hardware, that is really futuristic. That's like
Mhm.
like a that's really very sci-fi, like if you have like every CCTV camera listening to you and understanding your voice or something like that. It's pretty out there. And then we move to the health side, where
Mhm.
you have one platform, and that platform basically extracts the biomarkers, right? And gives so
Mhm.
that's a very domain, so that's much more domain specific, I believe. Or is
That is
that
more
a more
domain.
general platform?
It is a general platform, so we designed it as a web API platform in order to provide most access for everybody and to have it mostly unified. So you can
Mm.
use it with every browser, more or less, but we also
Hmm.
have specific settings, for example, on Android and also for iOS apps, where we have accompanying data collection possibilities. So basically, this is all modularly interlinked, and it's also, as I said,
Hmm.
interlinked with the device product that can be implemented in hearables and wearables. And what AI Sound Lab does is it basically allows for the collection of standardized voice tests. Standardized voice tests in the area of health are important because it's necessary to detect certain type of biomarkers that you can also apply in the wild. So you have to have some sort of normative control data that you collect
Hmm.
also from healthy people
Yeah.
in order to separate them from some certain diseases, and also
Hmm.
in order to be able to have long-term provision or long-term analysis possible. And that is what we are aiming for with this platform. So this platform collects data from you in different
Hmm.
type of stages. If you want it,
Hmm.
of course, you have to do those
Yep.
tests. You can do those tests when you're healthy. You can do those tests, or at least feel healthy. You can do those tests when you feel sick. And
Hmm.
based on that, our software can detect also differences. And the reason why we set it up in that way is that we want to collect or allow people to have the chance to save data also when they are healthy. So
Mm-hmm.
if I'm healthy, I sometimes don't even think about doing something. But when I'm
Yeah.
sick, I think about doing something. But if I collect also data from me being healthy, it allows me better to differentiate what actually happened, where this type of dysfunctionality comes from, what type of anomaly I have here. So
Mm-hmm.
have the possibility to get symptoms in a much more deeper way, but also to support diagnosis. And not only that, also to support therapy. So our aim with this platform is to have a generalized approach in order to have a mass market product that can be also applied globally, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
in a very easy way where people can also create a more self-awareness part, but also have the possibility to deliver the data to professionals that then analyze them from a medical perspective. That has the
I
big
see.
advantage that I can detect diseases earlier. And
Mm-hmm.
if I already have a disease, it has a big advantage also that given the historical data, the probability that my therapy will be more individualized and better working for me is much higher. So I'm also from a pharmaceutical or therapy perspective confronted with a much more individualized approach towards myself, which ideally improves my well-being.
Mm-hmm. I see. So from the health side, instead of selling it to, I mean, of course, you could sell it to health organizations that want to use the technology alone. But your main purpose there, at least for now, is to build a a direct to consumer platform where people can actually sign up and record their voice in different situations, and actually, so you remove the middleman because you're still in the early stages of the technology, right? And from a mass market perspective, it's still super early. So actually going to be doing the diagnostics yourself from the platform.
Now, at the moment, or the strategy is twofold.
Okay.
The web API, as we have it in a general setting, can
Hmm.
be used by everybody. At the
Yeah.
moment, it has the standardized sets, and it's also there for the individual person or patient, as you might call the person, to collect own data in different type of stages and to get a glimpse upon whether there are changes in there. We have, on the other hand, a classical B2B setting, so to speak, where we
Hmm.
have the possibility that clinics or also professionals utilize the very same platform for their own studies, researching a certain disease. So the possibility that we have here is that we bring two people together with different type of targets, but their main goal together is improve the well-being of the patient. The research side, from a clinical perspective, utilizes the platform for studies with patients with certain diseases already. The
Hmm.
user, on the other hand, utilizes the platform with different stages, when I'm healthy, when I'm sick, whenever, and can actually access the possibility of the research that the clinic did. Yeah, on the other hand, yeah, so in the back, when
Hmm.
the clinic does the certain research on a certain disease, they get more information. The biomarker can be detected by a much better probability, and this benefits directly the patient at home that is maybe not even a patient, but might be able to access a much more intense possibility for something that can be detected out of the voice. Because on the other hand, clinics are using this functionality for adjusted or a better therapy and also a
Hmm.
better clinical study. So we have two things that we bring together here in this platform, and we link them without having the necessity of somebody being physically somewhere there, yeah, and different type of stages. And that allows, of course, when we retrieve the data from the customer, yeah, at the healthy part, to compare much better for the clinic what's really going on in the unhealthy
Hmm.
part, in the disease part. So they do
Hmm.
not only see the patient data, but have the access also for the comparison for healthy people. That provides much more information for clinical research. And in order from our target also for the pharmacy or pharmaceutical industry.
So there's a lot going on here, right? But what ties it all together is the technology, right? The core technology is
Yes.
just packaged in many different ways, because it's one of those classic cases, right? One technology, as you build the company, as you keep expanding to new markets and whatnot, right? So from a technical perspective, what is the output of the core system that you've developed? Like, once you plug in the voice into the actual deep learning system, what comes out? What do people get from it?
Basically, that at the moment they cannot see it yet, but it's
Yeah,
already in the back end.
yeah,
And
yeah.
the target is that people have an app where they, for example, record a half a minute or a minute of their own speech, that they talk to somebody or that they read a certain text, and based on that they get the feedback, oh, we've detected some sort of anomaly, or we've detected some sort of dysfunctionality, please monitor, or oh, nothing seen there, and you sound quite happy and everything's quite okay for you. On the other hand, the clinic or the professional sees, for example, if he does some certain therapy for somebody, let's say with, for example, Parkinson's or Alzheimer's, and they have some sort of medication,
Mm,
how the medication also influences this daily picture, whether it's better or not. Also, they get, for example, from a patient that has only one disease and develops another one, an impact factor why this disease developed and an early recognition. Yeah. So we have the possibility to interlink here. So they can see, okay, this is how it developed. This might be an action worthwhile taking. So I give feedback to my patient without the patient always being in my practice, because
mm-hmm.
usually I don't have time. I see them only punctually, but that allows that I see them much bigger and much more often. And that implies a better therapy. So the one
I
has the
see.
target in the hand and the other has the data in the hand. And basically that's where they're interlinking.
I see.
And the technology has the big advantage that it doesn't get tired. It works
Yeah,
more than 24 hours per day.
yeah,
It is not influenced by any type of extrinsic possibility, because also a doctor is a human being,
yeah,
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 and
yeah.
can
Yep,
have a bad day or can be
yeah,
tired.
yep, yep.
And on the other hand, it provides a very good access on professional information, and that trains the person themselves to get a better self-awareness for the well-being. And that's how
Mm-hmm.
they both interlink together.
I see. So whether it's B2C or B2B, from your perspective, the outputs of the model are abstracted away from the end customer, right? So you basically
Yes,
give them the inferences, but not the direct outputs of the model. Like, okay, these are the biomarkers or whatever. You just give them the inferences on top of, like, you have one more layer after the outputs of the core technology that makes the
yes,
detections of and the diagnosis, and you pass those on to the customer from the
correct.
API.
That's
I see.
correct. So basically, what we do is not only we detect one certain biomarker and say, let's say, easy speech pause relation is basically a core biomarker for Parkinson's.
Mm-hmm.
We make basically say, okay, biomarkers that are relevant for diseases might be this a speech pause relation, might be intermittent hoarseness, might be different type of other things,
Yeah.
and they are mapped to the disease
Yeah.
by their intensity, so that we
Mm-hmm.
see, okay, here are significant markers for that
Yeah.
type of disease by intensity, and not only they are just generally there, because
Mm.
that is something that makes the system extremely flexible and not only focused on one disease, but that way we can actually have the biomarkers and their influences analyzed for a set of diseases. And that makes, of course, a lot of sense, because if you, for example, think about the patient journey,
Yeah.
sometimes it takes a patient ages until they are diagnosed correctly.
Mm.
And they go from one doctor to the next doctor to the next doctor with
Yeah.
different type of tests. And the way that we basically see this in a very holistic view allows us to enhance this patient journey, and
Mm-hmm.
also allows for, on the other hand, for the industry to basically utilize this information for better therapy, and it supports the health system because it reduces costs by enhancing effectiveness. And
Mm-hmm.
so this is a very globally summed up approach that we want to have here.
So that's a good segue into the next topic, which is what kind of biomarkers or does voice data excel at, right? That, voice is really good at showing you certain biomarkers, like certain symptoms that you don't get for those diseases from other. And of course, by the way, we all know that doctors also sometimes use voice data, right, for diagnosing certain diseases.
Yeah,
And the next thing is, let's start with that, and then we will segue into the next question. I'm now going to just drop it all on you at
yeah.
once. Yeah.
So, voice is actually a very interesting biomarker possibility because
Mm-hmm.
the speech production system that we have is quite complex. I mean, just talking might be something pretty normal for everybody. But if
Mm-hmm.
you're looking on how voice is produced and how you do that, you can actually be quite proud of your body because it's a very complex thing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, it starts with actually inhaling or breathing in, where you basically take the air and the air has to go, for example, through your lungs and through a different type of muscles that basically allow you to formulate even a tone. Yeah, so a lot of motoric functionalities are associated with the speech production process. Meaning, for
Mm-hmm.
example, your cheek muscles, meaning your tongue, meaning your basically your breast muscles, your lungs. So a set of a lot of muscles basically associated with producing speech. And if some of those type of muscles dysfunctional or not working well, you can hear that. So you have the motoric part. The second part is those all nice muscles have to be controlled by the brain.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a brain deficiency or a problem here, like for example in neurodegenerative diseases,
Yep.
it actually can be heard because you cannot actually control the muscles quite well.
Mm-hmm.
So your speech starts, for example, to get more monotonous. Yeah, your frequencies or your pitch is not as articulative as before. You have different type of jitter and shimmer that you don't see before. So all those cognitive dysfunctionalities or cognitive problems is something that have a direct influence on the motoric control of your voice. The third
Mm-hmm.
part we're looking at is, of course, physiological aspects. Very easy. Think about you doing sports. If you're running, you're producing speech completely differently if you would sit or lay down somewhere. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or, for example, if you have head neck cancer or neck throat cancer, you have a physical problem in your neck, tumor likely, that influences how you produce the speech.
Yep.
That means you do it differently. And those three aspects is something that we are basically or dramatically focusing on because they provide us with information if something is not running correctly or might have some sort of an anomaly that can be detected. And that's what we are researching, especially when we are searching for different type of voice biomarkers. It's basically how you speak and not only what you speak, what is also some part of it. Like, for example, if you are looking at Alzheimer's as a neurodegenerative disease, you have the problem sometimes that patients do utilize words that are not in context.
Yep.
And that is some sort of a quite good indicator also. And then you have the emotional part. So never forget the emotional part. That is also a quite vital biomarker for diagnostics. So if you, for example, start with having impairment in your speech, you tend to socially withdraw. That means if you're looking, for example, at simple indicators like how much you would be talking on average per day and to how many people you would be talking on average per day. And this reduces dramatically. That might be an indicator that something is wrong. Yeah. So we have very different type of aspects that all together provide a probability of
Mm.
something being in not correct. And
Mm. Mm.
then it is up to the professional to have a view and to check whether all those type of indicators that have been provided by the systems really apply or whether there is something different that's coming up. So it's a very good indicator for a pre-selection, for
Yep.
creating self-awareness, and also a
Mm-hmm.
very neutral tool that we have working on here.
So two thoughts on that. The one is, first is, of course, you're detecting an anomaly, right, in somebody's voice, which means you also need a baseline. Like, okay, that's why you collect the
Exactly.
health data, right? You want to get the
That's
baseline and
correct.
then you find anomalies. And the other is when people have certain biomarkers that are so clear that you don't even need, it's not even an anomaly. You can just say that, yeah, that is very similar to Parkinson's, because it just gets clustered in a way, right? Like,
Yeah.
you can also unsupervisedly see that some certain types of speech or voice are very indicative of certain diseases. So it's kind of both ways, right?
Yes.
I see. And the other thing is, do you also use natural language processing? Because voice and speech like the meaning of the actual speech that they're giving. As you said, certain brain disorders like not only affect your voice but also the words that you're saying, right? Where they don't really sometimes make complete sense or something. Is that also something that your technology takes into account, or does it ignore that and focuses mainly on the voice aspect so far?
Basically, it also takes it into account. Our major focus is of course, the acoustics.
Yeah.
But we also combine this with linguistics and
Hmm.
phonetics. So for
I
us,
see.
it is the very much in detail transcript is not even that important. So we
Yeah.
rather analyze from a speech perspective, for example, what type of words does somebody use? How is the
Mm.
articulation of those type of words? Yeah, is the
Mhm.
pronunciation differently? For example, we have also a commercial product in dialect detection. Yeah,
Okay.
so we
Yeah.
can detect where somebody comes from based on different type of dialects. Yeah, that
Yeah.
we have trained the models on, and
Mhm.
so we can very much from those type of aspects see acoustics, phonetics, linguistics, where we are coming from. But
Yeah, I can.
acoustics and phonetics are more in our focus than the linguistic part.
Yeah, I can almost imagine like an accent removal class that uses the software to detect like what's your score on the British accent if you're trying to fake it as an actor or something like that, right? It's
No, but
interesting.
a very funny thing, or what does it mean funny? For example, we do a project in the health area for autistic children.
Hmm.
And there we have a serious gaming environment where we teach autistic children emotions like a foreign, like you would do with a foreign language. So,
Mm.
in order to improve their socio-empathic factors or socio-emotional capabilities. So it's basically an acoustic and phonetic part where we show children that would, for example, be anger, and they have to recognize whether it would be anger. And in the next step, they have to express it, and we provide them with the feedback. It's basically installed on a robot, whether they would really consider that as being angry, or whether the system would consider it as being angry. So you have expressed angry correctly. It's like you would have a language teaching platform that
Hmm.
shows you how to pronounce this. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, pretty cool, pretty cool. I mean, a lot of like endless possibilities once you have a
Yes.
really cool technology, and of course, 20 years of research tend to create like a technology that's pretty robust to many different applications. And what does it take to do this at a clinical grade level, or what is the criteria? I mean, it's a very regulated industry, right? So give us an overview of the obstacles or the processes, or what do you have to go from, okay, this is a really interesting technology, it seems to work in the research in the university environment, or in the lab environment, whatever you call it, right? And then let's get it out there so that people can buy and pay money for it and we can get paid for it. What does it take to go from A to B in that end?
So basically, we are very close towards the B end. We've
Hmm.
always designed the technology in a way that is really applicable in the wild, meaning like you have your smartphone, you speak to it, and actually you get the result.
Yeah.
But we are in Europe here, and Europe has a lot of regulations. They're already thinking about AI regulations in a very heavy duty way. So
Wow.
innovation is always good in Europe, but not to that much extent. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we are always enviously looking into the Asian section or the US section or even towards Israel and see what's possible there with deep tech companies.
Yeah.
Whereas here in Europe, we have always some sort of struggle with the big overregulation, to be quite honest. So,
Hmm.
on the other hand, this can be an advantage because our systems are designed for absolute maximum data protection. So you can be very, very sure that your data is not
Okay.
misused.
Okay.
Our systems
That's
are
one.
designed for absolutely minimizing any type of bias. That means it is a very fair AI that we are looking for. Also, because we have high standards on the data it has to be trained on. And this full GDPR compliance and fair AI also leads to transparency. So, what we also need to have here in Europe is a most transparent description of what's going on in order to enhance the trust in also utilizing the system. So, we can try, or we actually use these disadvantages that we have from a regulation and obstacles perspective also to our advantage to have a very safe product for the end user. Yeah? So if somebody really wants to have something very safe, look for the European part because they have to do it by regulation. The other hand is, of course, it's much more intense and much more also cost intensive to get the data. Yeah, because it's very hard. So for us, we have a very clear focus on not only getting massive data,
Yep.
but we rather put the quality of the data in our main perspective. So I can have a lot of data, tons of data, but it does not say anything about how qualitatively the data is, for example, labeled, or what the checks are, how the data has been collected, whether this has been ethical or something. And so I'm very amused when I see companies advertising, oh, we got millions and zillions of data sets, because it actually says absolutely nothing about the quality of the models and about what's coming out there. And I think this transparency aspect and this focus on quality is a very big advantage. On the other hand, it takes much longer, of course, to have those type of things medically certified in Europe. We have very strict processes that vary throughout the different European states. But usually you need to have a scientific validation of your model
Okay.
from a third party. You have to have a medical validation from a university clinic or a clinical trial partner in order to have those type of biomarkers certified for the health application. So it's much more regulated and much more difficult to get this type of certifications than in other areas of this world. And as I said, on the other hand, the advantage is once you have it,
Yeah.
you really
You
have
have
a
solid
very,
proof, and
very
yeah.
safe, solid, robust product. So it's always up and down.
Yeah, you also have a more competitive moat, right? Like, it's not easy to get to compete with you. Once you get, the more you get through those obstacles, the lesser the competition has. But also the payoff is huge. So it's like, I mean, it's interesting. I was talking to this company from Finland, and they build this medical imaging software, and she was saying that, whoa, yeah, I understand that we have to deal with a ton of regulation in Finland, and there's a lot of money that you need to get to this point. But she also said that the payoff is so huge that we still have a lot of tough competition, even though it's extremely highly regulated, right? So, but in your case, when you have like a seriously new technology, and it's I believe very proprietary, what's the competitive landscape like from your end? And give me the objective, like, unbiased perspective on this one.
Yes, the umpire's perspective is what we've been researching for 2 decades now is now becoming the real hot stuff. Yeah, so we see a lot of competition coming up, especially in the US market, that is severely funded because the US and also, for example, Israel tend to have a much more intense and risk friendly funding or venture capital area.
Yep.
So a lot of them are coming up. And what we've already seen from the commercial part, though, when it comes to recognition of different type of things, for example, in the call center area, they usually they do it quicker, but they stick to their market because of the regulations that we have in Europe. So once you design a system and you do not think about those type of applications or regulations up front, you have a very hard way of implementing them later on because
I
it
see.
impacts the complete process. So we see a lot of competition coming up. We also face that they have access to much more data. That is something that is not deniable. But as I said, I think based on the mindset that we see from our perspective is that the focus on the quality of data and the focus on the security and transparency and ethical component is not something that is in their focus. So we will have the possibility of coexisting in a way that if somebody is really trying to keep themselves secure, they will rather opt for a system that we have if somebody is trying to go for a quicker result or maybe a result that is trained on much more data, but not really taking the quality into account. They can also go, for example, for competition. Although I have to say, most of the competition that we see that's coming up in a company form, we never saw in the scientific area. So
I
we
see.
never see papers or very seldomly see any type of scientific work that has actually been done there. So for me, that also says this is some sort of a black box. Whereas we still we do a lot of publications. We actually work very much with research institutes and with universities. So our work has never been a black box, and we've been always very transparent on the results. We provide confidence measures, we provide insights. So for us, this is an ethical thing to say, okay, I don't want to lie or make nice marketing slides about what things can do. If
Mm-hmm.
somebody is really having a health issue or problem, I have to be honest. Yeah. And I have to also say, okay, the probability that something that the system doesn't detect it is maybe 20%. And I have 80% probability that the system has detected something. And I think this type
Mm-hmm.
of transparency, however, is important for creating the trust that people are working with this type of technology.
Yeah, that makes sense, and it's interesting that I'm from the self-driving car industry, and I see a lot of parallels there, because when you're building an AI company, right, where AI, like training a machine learning model, is the core of your technology. There's always this short-term versus long-term strategy, right? Like to get your product to a market validation quickly, you can ship a half-assed, like use, like you said, millions of data points that you just collect from somewhere, and you kind of clean it up a little bit, and you train the model to get certain, like to do a demo basically, right?
Mhm.
Or to make it really robust, you take the long route, you keep training for a long time, and you have to keep funding without having, that maybe that the revenue that you could have if you just went to market immediately. But in the long run, the technology works much better in the certain technically challenging areas, right? For example, it was very easy to build self-driving cars that could drive on the highway, right? They've been doing it since the 90s, in fact, like in
Mhm.
some ways, right? But drive a car that can drive in but to make a car that can drive in San Francisco on its own is a completely different challenge in an urban environment where
Yeah, yeah.
people, like kids, are running around, right? So certain companies, for example, Cruise, they raised $30 billion almost in funding to get to that stage. Like, so, and they stayed in business for, like, almost 10 years, right? Just training the models and whatnot. While a lot of companies that went after the highway thing, like just trained to get the model out, they just couldn't actually go to market. They couldn't actually remove the driver from the car in the situations that really mattered. So it's interesting, like you mentioned, the good data versus bad data.
Yes. It's a very important factor.
Hmm. And just, for a quick reference, I'm going to ask you a sensitive question. Since we're talking about data, right, and data is the core of the machine learning, the core input to the machine learning models that you're building, on the order of magnitude in terms of the money that you've raised so far, okay, as a percentage of the money you've raised so far, and also as the absolute value, how much money have you had to just spend on data so far, like just collection?
Well, we spent quite a sum on data collection, to be honest, but I don't want to go that much in detail. I think from a funding perspective, in general, audEERING has been quite interesting
Okay.
and quite different from any type of other competition that has been out there.
Huh.
And I also see this as an advantage that I'm very proud of. When we founded audEERING, we founded it actually with the whole capital of 7,500 euros. We were basically cash flow positive from day one because we were very well recognized in the scientific area, and people who were working with us knew that we were a trustworthy partner and that the results that we
Mhm.
were produced are really tangible results and not only some sort of, as I said, marketing slides that blink and make some funny fuss.
Mhm.
And so we did not start getting the millions and zillions like others. When we started out with the target to really showcase that we can do something in our area before we go out and say we need funding.
Mm.
And the actually seed funding that we got, we was in the million area, of course,
Mhm.
but we got it with a strategic partner rather than a venture capital
I
company
see.
because I think our co-company perspective is not based on we make a lot of money and exit out quickly, which a
Mhm.
lot of companies sometimes do.
Yeah, seen
But
them.
we want to make Nothing wrong with that, by the way.
Yeah, yeah.
But we want to make something different. I think that's also our background. We want to have a sustainable technology, and we want to make a difference in a way that we can be proud of. That we can say, okay, somebody's using audEERING inside, and it's just working. And when you have that type of spirit, you are working differently towards the products that you are doing. You have a much more ethical approach to them towards them, and that's why we raised money with a strategic partner that
Mm-hmm.
has supported us so far and also allowed us to implement our technology in real products where we had the possibility to really see and confirm that what we do is working.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So who was your first customer? Just for
Uh,
context.
our first customer was the GfK, the very big market research company out of Germany.
I
And
see.
they
I
have
see.
been acquired by Ipsos market research, at least in Germany. But that was our very first big client.
Wow, that's fantastic. Cash positive from day one. I think as an AI company, that's incredible. And of course, like, the day one was came after day, 365 times 20, of course, of research.
Mm.
Yeah, and that's interesting. The journey for you from a fundraising perspective. Have you raised any venture so far?
No, as I said, we only
Yeah,
have raised with a strategic partner, but at the
yeah.
moment, we are preparing actually for a Series A financing in the health part. So we are
I see.
actively searching for a partner that will support our health endeavors. But differently from others that have might be only a business plan, we really have some substantial value and substantial product that we already have. So it's a much more mature investor that we are searching for,
Yeah.
that also is intelligent money for us in a way, or smart money for
Mm-hmm.
us in a way, that the investor we are searching for is not only interested in the health section, but also might be having a very good use case of our technology within its own endeavors.
Yeah, there are some certain things that you said in the last 5-10 minutes, which I want to really point out as something things that struck out to me. The first thing that really noticed was you said that in your domain you have to kind of think about all the different markets and products you're going to pursue a little upfront, because if you zone in on one small market that you want to really dominate first, it's very hard to switch over to the others, right? So that was
Correct.
interesting. I'm curious to go into detail if we had more time into why that is, and how that discussion happened in your company and what's the inside story. But that was something that stood out to me. The other thing you mentioned was, it's very easy to for an investor to come in and say, hey, this is an asset technology, let's license it to as many people, go for an IPO or just get it acquired or something like that, and I'm going to collect checks for a living, like in sitting by the pool, right? That's one way. Of course, a lot of researchers don't want to be a CEO. A lot of researchers just want to do that, and or just, and a lot of even entrepreneurs just want to flip the company, right? They acquire
Mm.
technology in a way, and then they flip it for a huge multiple and go on. And your personal vision is to more like build a company, build a long-term company, run that company yourself, and keep going after new market, keep it exciting in a way for from your personal standpoint. So that's why you're looking for a certain type of investor, and you started with a strategic partner in a way, and that's kind of a personal preference. Like, so you want to choose what kind of money you want to buy for your shares.
That's
uh,
correct. So I think for us, it started out with this vision that we had, and it is really also a personal thing. I'm not saying that I want to be CEO forever, yeah,
yeah.
but if my vision is still that people are dealing with humanity in a way that it provides them with better well-being. And if people are seeing our three waves, I want them to associate them with those three waves, allow me to feel better and enhance my living and my lifestyle. And for companies, I want to have that they associate those three waves with trustworthy, robust technology that they can rely on if they implement them in their products. And sometimes you do see technologies enabling things, yeah, and you don't
Hmm.
even recognize them. But when you're thinking for a longer perspective, it's just something that sets a standard, and that's what you want to expect. Just similarly, like some sort of a sound system. Yeah, you have had very many people who provide you with a sound system. Yeah, but the way that the sound has to appear to you might be you want to have Dolby surround or whatever. Yeah, so you're looking for that capability inside. And we are a company that can provide this capability inside and can be utilized by big brands. But everybody shall associate it with I'm feeling better and I'm better because I trust this technology, because this technology enables me, and what type of end entity I use for it. Yeah, from what type of ever a manufacturer is then a personal setting. But the relevant thing is that technology has this capability. And that's what we are
Yep.
driving for.
Yep. Absolutely. I have one last question for you, if that makes sense. What was the most painful lesson learned so far in the journey of building this company that you wouldn't want to not repeat if you could go back in time? And on the flip side, what was the biggest win moment? Like, what was the biggest thing that you're personally most proud of achieving in the journey so far?
Well, I start with the first one. Basically, the worst moment was for me, or personally, to see that people tend still to, yeah, be more attracted by fancy marketing than by facts and figures. Sometimes people do not want to see facts and figures because the story that they are told, even if it's not that much true, is more appealing. And the hardest thing is always to accept that even if you outperform on a technological level or on a better level and see some others, basically the decision goes for the other person because they just do, yeah, let's put it that way, they are not as open upon the possibilities as you are yourself. You're always a little bit frustrated why people do not accept certain facts and try really to tend to believe other news if they are just designed nicer. So my biggest frustrating moments were always associated with the,
Investor
yeah,
conversations?
conversations where you see smart people, really smart people, and you just cannot believe that they don't see the facts and they rather want to believe a fairy tale. And that I call myself is always the power of fairy tale. It's maybe you call it people want to tend to like positive news better than realistic news. But that's always something, or that was something that frustrated me a couple of times, to be honest, in the journey. And my biggest success stories would be that there are still a lot of people out there who rather having also this ethical approaches that we have. And my biggest success stories was that basically I had employees from different type. We are very diverse company, so I employ people from about 15 nationalities, and it's a very nice family there. And my biggest success stories were not signing different type of contracts because the technology is good. It
Yeah.
was when a couple of my employees especially approached me and said working at audEERING has been the best thing that they've ever done, and it has been their best chance that they were having, and that they're so happy to be here. So that
Wow.
was actually something that gave a lot of things back to me, where I always say, okay, it's a good thing to sometimes, yeah, not only focus on what is the next euro that I make tomorrow, but to make a smart euro and also an ethically correct euro.
Yeah, I love that. I love that because even as an entrepreneur, as a CEO myself, um, really, I mean, it's really good to see the revenue, and it's really hard, like harsh to see deal with the external stuff sometimes. But really, the safe place, like the place I go to get actually motivation, is to see when an employee is invested, right, in the vision. Like they're all in with me. They're like, I'm,
They're all
I'm
in, yeah.
supporting you. That's really the safe place where like okay, as long as I have that, it's like the family, right? As long as I have the family in order,
Correct.
then the external stuff can be dealt with over time. And
Yes.
to speak to your first, the more frustrating part was that, yeah, I've seen a lot of companies deal with that. I've been involved with a company that had to shut down because of exactly that reason, where the technologically the the best in the market, but didn't figure out a growth story to tell the investor, like, whoa, why this is going to be $100 billion company in like
Mm.
10 years, like this is a huge like opportunity, like it's going to change the world, and you'll get the biggest payoff and whatnot. But thank you so much, Dagmar,
Thank you.
and appreciate you being here and being so open. And, thank you. Good luck with your endeavors.
Thank you very much. And thank you for having me, Aman.